I'm going to start off by reading you a book. A mate of mine sent me a copy of his autobiography. I know you're probably going, fucking autobiography is only important to the person who wrote it. But not this one. This one has a magic about it that tends to bring things up. When I started reading it, I ended up putting it down 136 pages in. It just brought up so much internally for me. I felt so much like I hadn't lived. So I want to share the prologue with you and hope to motivate you to start the journey that I started after reading this book. Okay, let's get into it. My official start time was 10 p.m. The security manager had asked that I be there a few minutes early. Grayson will be at the door. He will show you the ropes. Being a dutiful young man, I had arrived at my new place of occupation at 9:45 p.m. I was dressed in a black suit with a bow tie and thought I looked like $1,000,000. I was 2 years too young to be drinking at the nightclub. My girl had bought me a small bottle of Blue Stratos aftershave, which I was now wearing on the face that did not need shaving. As good as I thought I looked in my suit, at the time I felt extremely uncomfortable. The stiff shirt collar and bow tie around my throat were unfamiliar and created a suffocating sensation. My formal suit jacket combined with my heavy wool overcoat felt heavy and restricted my range of movement. As I walked towards the door, I couldn't help but think to myself, who the hell dresses up for trouble? By the time I reached the entrance to the mill, my stomach was churning, my hands were sweaty, and my heart was pounding. I couldn't decide if I was wildly excited or absolutely terrified as I set out on this new adventure. Grayson was leaning against the counter in the outer foyer, staring dead ahead, a predator watching for prey. His greeting consisted of a nod and a grunt, accompanied by a short but steel grip handshake. I greeted him in turn, "G'day, I'm Nathan," in which he gave me the short reply, "Grayson." He was a medium height and medium build. His suit looked like it belonged in the 1980s, while his hair was styled as per the current Patrick Swayze fashion. 9:46 p.m. "You can get a coffee if you want over there," said Grayson casually. He appeared to be as relaxed as a lion lazing in the heat. But I would soon learn that this was merely the low phase of an adrenaline junkie waiting for his next high. I headed for the coffee, returning a few minutes later, 9:50 p.m. "Here's your pager. If you look up at the corner there, you can see a light box. The lights on the box are different colour, and each colour represents a different area of the building. There are several boxes around the building, so it doesn't matter whether you are upstairs or downstairs in the basement club. When you hear the pager, you'll know some shit's going down. Check out the box and it will tell you where the fuck the trouble is. You'll get used to it. The main bar here is red. The club's not open yet." He rolled a smoke, lit it, and still leaning against the counter, gazed out into the night, calm and steady, waiting. He had seen bouncers come and go. There was nothing to say. No words that could bolster my presence. I would either succeed or fail. If I failed, I would be no good to him, and he would, under no certain terms, make this known to me and my manager. 9:55 p.m. Beep, beep, beep. I looked up at the light box and saw the red light. Fuck. I wasn't even on the payroll yet. The sound of the pager sent adrenaline coursing through my body. It was a response I would soon become very used to and eventually looked forward to. Taking my cue from Grayson, we moved to the bar. Grayson went to the bar entrance where the duty manager was waiting. This rugby team needed to go. One's passed out and the others aren't in much better shape. They came in before you guys got on shift. Yeah, he said. This was the busiest venue in the city, and the bar was already heavily crowded. Shit. Two of us versus a rugby team. Over a dozen guys. Grayson turned to me and explained things very simply. We pick up the fucking sleeper and the rest will want to follow. And so we angled in. As Grayson went in long on the right side of the sleeper, face planted on the bar, I went in on the left. The drunken team members were already onto us. What the fuck do you want? Grayson was unmoved. Your man's passed out, you need to get him some fresh air. The response was just as Grayson expected. As the sleepers' teammates slowly began to comprehend what their mate's peaceful sleep was about to be disturbed by a couple of asshole bouncers, the righteous wrath of the truly drunk and stupid was ignited. Grayson took one look at me, nodded, signalling that we picked up our man. We took the man by the elbows and lifted him. As expected, this immediately set off the explosive reaction from the rest of the team. Fucking leave him alone, you bastards. Our rugby team members attacked, laying down blow after blow. Instinctively we turned our heads into the sleeper, leaving only the sides and backs of our heads exposed. It seemed to take forever to break free of the men holding and punching us, but there was no way that Grayson was going to stop, and as long as he was going, I was going. Finally we broke out of the pack and heard Grayson yell to me, "Run!" Patron scrambled to get out of the way as we gained momentum, heading for the front exit. Grayson and I used the drunken sleeper like a battering ram. The three of us exploded out of the door onto the street, and the rest of the team stampeded out the door behind us. As soon as we were clear of the door, I again took my cue from Grayson, who literally dropped the sleeper. We were now out on the street and on dangerous ground. Once again, Grayson yelled a command to me, "Get in!" We quickly doubled back into the small foyer before the milling rugby team had time to realise that we were now back inside and they were suddenly outside. I stood alongside Grayson inside the small entrance foyer. Braced in a boxing stance, I was bruised. My face and head were numb, my ribs ached. There was some blood, but I could not tell you where it came from. The rugby team was beginning to grumble and make noises that they were coming back in, though they were still trying to comprehend how they ended up outside in the first place. As Grayson and I faced off against them, the most surprising thing happened. Grayson smiled. It was a happy, confident smile that had "fuck you" and the horse you rode in on written all over it in large letters. Not only had we managed to remove the whole team, but now he had his hands free and was ready for some payback. But such a smile does not go unnoticed. Even drunk and as full as bravado they were, a number of the team members were still sober enough to realise that discretion might be the better part of valour. After a few taunts, the men backed away, picked up their mate, and struggled off into the night. Moments later, Grayson was once again leaning and smoking, gazing into the night. Elation filled me. What a rush. It took a while for my heart to stop racing, but I was buzzing. I had survived my first bar altercation and I felt good. I had backed up my partner, proved myself to be trustworthy in battle. Grayson was still smiling, even though we had not got through a single punch in retaliation. At 10:05, the security manager arrived. "Hey Grayson, I see you've met our new man. Looks like a quiet night so far. Should be a good night to ease him into it." Grayson looked across at me and grinned, causing us both to burst into laughter. "Yeah, the new guy's alright." We joked about that for many years. Although I didn't recognise it at the time, it's with hindsight that I can clearly see how well suited I really was to bouncing. One could also say I had been handmade. In that first altercation on the door, I had no fears regarding my personal welfare or safety. I had learned how at a very young age that I could take physical punishment. Instead, all of my concerns were centred on the fear of letting my teammate down. what I'm hoping you get out of the book is the sense of presence, the sense of being here now, letting go of all the bullshit excuses that you've given yourself to not be the person you really wanted to be. And when you really analyze it, when you really bring them up, they are bullshit. Okay. So if you would like a copy of this book, you can go to Nathan's website, which is Terminal Ballistics Research. And if you're thinking to yourself, this sounds like an interesting bugger, you'd be right. So I can feel a road trip coming on. I think we should go and see Nathan. All right, thank you very much for joining us here at the virtual pub, and we'll see you next time. Thank you. Okay guys, we're here with Nathan Foster, author of the book, The Door. We read the prologue in the last episode. Now Nathan, this is a bit different from your normal books that I've read of yours. Can you tell us a bit about this? What was the inspiration? How did this come about?
Well, up until last year, the books that I had written were all centred around ballistics. That's my area of expertise. But as you know, for years I worked on the door as a bouncer, and I worked overseas as a bodyguard. But one thing I perhaps wasn't aware of consciously was that all throughout this time I've been working as this ballistics expert, when I was sleeping at night, I was often standing on the door, and I was monitoring people coming and going through these various clubs that I've worked at over the years. And then about a year ago, I actually became aware of it while I was sleeping, and I was watching this crowd coming in through a club in London. And then a book came floating towards me, and it said The Door by Nathan Foster, and then I realised, well, it's actually probably time I put my thoughts on paper from all those years ago. And so I got up pretty early that morning and got started writing The Door. So that's how that came about. So a little bit of something there from the subconscious mind trying to tell me something.
Brilliant.
So you've read the book. What was it that actually struck you about the book for yourself?
It was the experiences, the way in which you were living. It was you were like the right person at the right time in the right place, and it flowed. It flowed like you were living life to its fullest. And in reading that, it brought up so much of how we live life to please others and to live in society, but we don't be all we can possibly be. And what I felt with reading the book was you were being all you could be at that time. You were learning, growing, enjoying, loving every moment.
Yeah, well, I think because I had it so rough, and there's rough and then there's rough, and it was a hard upbringing. And you hear a lot about young people coming through and they've had it rough, and they take it on board, and they default to giving up before they've even got a start in the world. So they get out there and they're basically life's losers. They're a statistic, really. But right from an early age, I had just this this kernel in me that it was a non-conformist kernel of it. It was a real fuck you, but it didn't necessarily mean being an anarchist, but I felt that my upbringing had been so hard that I was rebelling against that, I suppose. But in doing so, there was just this part of me that said, actually, you know what, you're worth something. This is not right. And I think that was the key. I had this fundamental understanding of right and wrong. I was born with that. I was very lucky to be born with that, because a lot of people come through and they don't. They'll just carry on and repeat those mistakes. But I had that, and I just needed somebody to take that. I wanted to be able to use that. And so I was very lucky, because later on I met these people that I was able to work with, and you know, as I went through life, as you say, right people, right time, that could actually help me out. So I think the first was Steph, really, because as soon as I met her, I knew that we shared the same values. And then and that was an interesting thing, because you know, most teenage boys, they're running around looking for girls and doing the usual thing, and I'd done my share of that, but nothing felt right until I got on board, until we had those values, you know, and then that was the right thing, and then I was smitten with her. But yeah, so I think that's what defined me. In a way, it was non-conformity, but not in a way that that you would class as anarchy, because anarchy's, I mean, it can be useful at times, but it can also be quite destructive, and it's self-destructive. But in my life, I wanted to do something constructive. I wanted to make a difference. So, and it was really about how do you define yourself as a man coming through? What is it that makes a man? You know, and that's a question that that sort of continues through a man's life. You know, what is it that defines me? Where is my worth? So, yeah.
One of the things with a lot of blokes is they struggle to find their way, what they love to do. They end up doing things for other people, or what society thinks they should be doing, and they never find that fulfillment, that happiness that you had at that time. And you've had it many times in your life.
Yeah.
Do you have any advice for other people, how to find that, what to look for?
Well, I've got to say, I've been guilty of a fair amount of people pleasing in my life as well. So I think it's something that we can all go through, because you want to do something worthwhile, and when you're young, you do need to learn how to actually make yourself worthwhile to others, to actually be productive, to actually fit in, and to do the hard yards to actually make something of yourself. So I think there's a place for that that's very, very important, and it's about showing compassion and gratitude towards others as well. So wanting to please them, that's good, that's an act of love. But as far as living a non-authentic life, I think for a lot of us, we're already thinking about the thing that we want to do 90% of the time. We don't have to go outside of ourselves to find something else which is going to fulfill us. Quite often, I think we're already that passion's already there. We've just got to just allow it to come through. But that doesn't make it easy, because the decisions I've made in my life have been bloody difficult. There's just no way around it. This business, it was a hell of a difficult thing, because no one else was doing what we do, and we just really had to forge that way ourselves. But we stuck it out, and we went without for a long, long time. So, I mean, it's not like a Disney movie where you follow your dream and there's a pot of gold right there waiting for you. It can take a hell of a long time. But I think that's where you really got to dig deep, and there's something that you have that nobody else has, but it was probably there all the way along, not just as an adult, but through the childhood. There's those unique things that made you you because of the upbringing that you had, and nobody else has that. You're that one combination. So yeah, if you can look back at your past and actually look at the story of your life, then you'll actually start to see some of those aspects of yourself, and those are the things that the hardest things to remember. But if you can, and you've got a good help, like for me, I'm very lucky because Steph, she'll sit and we'll talk about these things, and she'll support me through it, because I said it hasn't been easy. But if I look back at the story of my life, all of these things were there, and as I wrote in the book, right down to the corniest things, the having the movie Star Wars and having the Aikido and all that all at the same time, and on the other side of it we had this quite violent stuff going on as well with the karate training, and it creates its own narrative. There was art imitating life, but it's starting to see, and in that sense, that was really about power, because it was, how do you define your power, and how do we develop power without abusing it and harming others, or without letting it destroy ourselves? That's been a theme all the way along. Yeah.
People think that success is nice car, nice home, nice holidays, plenty of money, material things. But what is success for you?
I think for me it's about really being the best that you can be, but not probably not in the way that most people think. It's about making a meaningful difference. You're here for a limited amount of time, and I just think if you're going to be here, then do something productive and actually live a meaningful life. I think that's the most important thing to me, and that's always been there for me as well, is to actually make a difference in a positive way.
Were there any indicators, any things you looked for in life to know you were on the right track?
Well, for me, my compass was set. I was navigating away from what I didn't want, which is, in some ways, that can be a great motivator, but it can actually leave you rudderless if you don't know which way you're actually going to. But and I've said that in the book as well. Fear is a great motivator. It gets us up and moving, but it's often driving us away from what we don't want, and that's fine up to a point. But at some stage in your life, you need to have something to move towards. So for me, I had a really strong moral compass, right and wrong. That's what guided me all the way through. So I'd had it pretty tough, and I didn't like what I'd seen around me, and so I really wanted to. I think I didn't really have that much of a direction in the beginning. I just knew what was right and what was wrong, and I didn't really want to conform to the norms, because as far as I could see, the norms all around me were wrong. So yeah, that was kind of what set me off in the direction that I went in. But I had, when I was young, and I had this passion for hunting, it wasn't the easiest thing to fit in with, because a lot of the girls when I was at primary school, they thought that was weird, and that I should be more interested in them and so forth. And the other young men were into the cool clothes and so forth at that stage, but I wasn't into that. I really wanted to learn about hunting and so forth. So yeah, I was driven at that stage, but I didn't quite know what I was going to do with all that. I just knew that I loved firearms and ballistics and hunting and all of these things, but I just didn't quite know how it would all come together. Actually, when I was when I was about 17 years old, I think I was farming at the time, and I went to the business development board, and that's what we had in the old days. It was kind of a, like a venture capital type scheme to help startups. And I told them my interests and what I really wanted to do, and I wanted to get into guided hunting, to take people away hunting and so forth. And of course I was just a kid, so they told me to get on my bike and piss off. So, I mean, that was to be expected. I had tried to get a job working for DOC as a government hunter, but the pay then was about $80 a week. So it was less than the dole, actually. And so I just stuck it out with farming until something else came along. But a lot of the time, you can't really see a plan for the future. It's really hard to actually make it all work out. And I think sometimes you need to have a plan to be able to move forward, but sometimes you actually can't see the big picture. And so you've just got to work with what you've got. You say, well, this is what I really enjoy doing, and you got to try and make it work somehow. And you can work within the sphere of influence or the place that you're at that time, but you can't see how that's going to work out long term. And I guess some of that's still the same for me now within the industry. I have a lot of influence globally within the hunting industry, but I still don't necessarily know what that will look like long term, and what laws might change in the future, and how that might affect me, and so forth. So really, especially during the tough times, you've really got to come back to, well, for me personally, come back to what I love, what do I love doing, and just focus on that, and just let everything else take care of itself. You've got to know what to hold on to, but you've also got to know what to let go of, and just let things take care of themselves. But I wouldn't. I mean, that kind of sounds like I'm a very I'm a person who just lets things be. I'm not actually. I'm quite an obsessive person when it comes to business and my pursuits. But there's, you've got to work out where does that actual control end. Yeah, it's not an easy place to be in, but you just got to do your best within that. Yeah.